I've got this oak log, which I'm going to quickly turn down to a cylinder shape, just to get an idea of what I've got. Welcome to today's project. I think you may find this project quite interesting. I'm going to create a goblet using an off-center turning technique, and also create some work with pewter for decoration. Along the way, I explain the off-center technique, so if you are an experienced turner, you may be able to turn your hand to something similar yourself. Now that I'm there, I need to turn a tenon so that I can hold the piece of wood in the chuck for safety. It's going to be around 35mm in diameter, which is quite thin for a tenon on this size of piece, but later on it will become apparent why. I'm fitting a 4-jaw chuck and refitting the piece back on the lathe. Now that the work is safely held in the chuck, I'm going to straighten up this end and do some initial goblet shaping. The wood is not fully seasoned, so I can expect some possible cracking and shape shifting to happen along the way. I'm going to leave it a little oversized for the time being, while it dries out a bit more. It's on with the steady to drill out the centre of the cup with a Forstner bit. The cup will have to be in a finished state before I can attempt any work on the shaft, so I'm sanding it up to 400 grit. Well, that's come up a treat. The grain pattern in the oak is looking superb. There's a couple of small knots that require a bit of superglue to stabilise them. The pewter decoration I mentioned at the beginning is going to be a ring attached to the lip of the cup. I'm melting some pewter on the barbie to cast the ring in this MDF mould. I'm using 2-part epoxy to attach the ring to the cup. Hopefully, this will be able to withstand any slight movement in the shape of the cup as the drying process continues. I haven't used pewter before, it's quite soft and turns easily. The design for the ring is going to be a shallow concave groove on the top surface and a concave finish to the side. It's been a couple of days now and the wood has dried out well, so I'm just truing up the outer surface. I've decided to have some resin inlay to complement the pewter and contrast with the wood. The colour I'm using is turquoise with a bit of gunmetal grey. The mould for the resin has been made from 2 laminating pockets glued together with hot glue. Two days later and it's time to remove the mould. I've made an end cap for the cup so that I can keep everything straight with the tailstock. This resin is turning very well. I want it to blend in with the curvature of the pewter ring. That's looking pretty cool. Everything's fine. I'm finishing off the outside of the cup with the usual range of grits before I start on the shaft. Now that the cup is virtually finished, I'm taking the shaft down to about 45mm. I worked out that a shaft of 110mm long would be needed for what I want to do. The shaft is down to the correct size, so I'm just giving the bottom of the cup some shape. Now, this is when the fun begins. So it's off with the 4-jaw chuck and on with a modified 3-jaw from my Myford lathe. First, I have to make sure the jaws close to the centre. Then open the jaws enough to take the size of the tenon. Refit the workpiece with the tailstock centre. The tailstock centre boss has been designed with a ring of 18 holes at a radius of 9mm from the centre hole. In line with the centre of jaw number 3, mark the top with a T. On the plate fitted to the back of the chuck, I have made 18 graticules, equally spaced, around the chuck. Using the measuring gauge, mark off each of the 18 graticules onto the tenon. Having removed the piece from the lathe, open the chuck to remove jaw number 3. Carry on opening the chuck to the point where jaws 1 and 2 are at the start position. Now close the chuck 10 revolutions of the key, then refit jaw 3 and close the chuck completely. On my chuck, this gives an offset of 16mm. Open the chuck and refit the piece with a graticule in line with the centre of jaw 3. Mark the graticule with T for top. Refit the tailstock plate and set the line to vertical, then set the tailstock centre to the bottom hole. It's very important to set the tool rest to square with the workpiece. During some practicing of the technique you're about to see, I devised this nifty little tool holder which I 3D printed to fit on the tool rest. This was required because the tool is only 3.6mm wide, which made it very difficult to see where the next cut should start. It also keeps the tool straight when cutting the slots. After each cut, the tool guide is moved on by the thickness of the tool. The tailstock offset is moved on by one hole, and the chuck end one graticule. The discs were cut to a diameter of 26 millimeters. And so the whole process goes on, 30 times in all. I'm now shaping the base to replicate the bottom of the cup. I've cleaned up the spiral and am applying some sanding sealer. I wanted another pewter ring but didn't have enough, so I came up with this. A base of Corian and pewter segments. I turned down the bottom, ready for the Corian base. The base was then shaped to fit. My only regret was that I didn't remove all the wood up to the bead, as I think the base looks a little thick. It was time for a few coats of lacquer. The tenon was removed and my maker's logo fitted. There she is, looking pretty sweet, don't you think? Stay around if you're interested on how I modified the chuck and made the Corian parts for the base. But if you're going, thanks for watching and please join me for my next video. This is the back plate. I used to modify my 3-jaw chuck from my Myford lathe. I made these bosses so that back plate would be centre to the chuck centre. Plate fixing holes were drilled and tapped. This is the tailstock centre plate, 18 holes drilled 16mm around the centre hole. This is the segmented base. This side has a hole for my logo and the other side has cutouts for the pewter segments. The centre hole was used to align the piece after it was turned over. The pewter segments